She has over 2 decades of experience building some of Africa's most loved and influential brands. She is the Chief Operations Officer and co-founder of the Partnership Africa. This week we're speaking to Sawe. This is She Means Business. I am your host, Claire Munde. Hi Sally.
Hello Claire.
How are you?
Very well, thank you. And you?
I'm well, thanks. Welcome to She Means Business.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yes. Now, you are an accomplished leader when it comes to the marketing space. But before we get to your current role, I'd like us to go a little bit back. Take us through your career journey and some of the pivotal moments that you've experienced so far.
Thank you. I think many people will be very surprised at where I started my career. My first job, which I applied for when I was just about to finish campus, was at Nation Media Group. I started as a sales executive, selling the East African. At that time, it had just been launched. I can tell you for true that I got into it without having any idea about selling a newspaper or any such thing, but that has never stopped me. It was a very interesting experience, and I actually credit a lot of the success that I have had to that job. It taught me hard work. It taught me to learn about doing things that I wasn't really aware of and how to go about that. It taught me to work with different people. It opened a new world to me in terms of different types of clients, whether it was retail outlets, whether it was an embassy. I really just had to stand in front of these people and present the newspaper at its best. Initially, of course, it was very hard work. I hadn't been living in Nairobi for a while. I had gone to university in Baraton, and I had no car. I had to learn how to move around, use public transport. I had been brought up in Nairobi, but my dad used to be in the army, and you know, when you're in the army, you're taken everywhere with the army cars, so school, streets. So it really taught me how to navigate life as an adult, responsible for myself, and therefore that really gave me some sort of resilience right off the bat. After about 4 years, I was earning very good money because the commissions were great, but I started thinking more and more about my professional life, my career, and what I really wanted. I had enjoyed learning sales, I had enjoyed earning the money, but it was time for me to get a bit more serious with my life. So while I understood sales, I had always been interested in advertising. Because part of what I learned was that there were people who used to handle advertising agencies directly. And I would sit with them and ask them, you know, what do these agencies do? And I understood what they were doing, and I felt very curious about it. And so I reached out to one of the ladies who used to handle agencies, and I told her I would really like to enter you know, this career and understand what it's about. And she was very kind and gave me a very good recommendation, and I got a job in then a small advertising agency. It was called DDBCCL. When I got in, I decided that this was going to be the place to really launch my career. I found a really good mentor. She used to be called Emma. She was the head of client service at the time. I found her so knowledgeable because she was speaking a language that I did not know. I didn't know much about advertising. She was extremely generous to me and taught me well. I learned everything that I know about advertising from her, whether it was about diligence, whether it was about hard work, whether it was about how to get new business, a full understanding of now what advertising was. And gave me opportunities to fail, to learn, to win, to let clients go, and to manage all the frustrations that can come from a very fast-paced sort of industry. She was a big part of my growth. Again, after 3-4 years, I decided maybe it's time to move again. I had then, by that time, heard about Scan Group. It was the biggest agency, and I said, if I want to be great at what I do, I have to work with the best that there is in the market. So again, I reached out to a friend of mine and I said, I'm very interested, and I got an interview. And my career then started at Scan Group. I started as an account director. My first business was, I had 2 businesses. I had Shell at the time before they became Vivo, and I had Isuzu. I'm happy that they are still a client today, Isuzu. And I got into it, and I decided this was where I was really going to expand. I was hungry. I was curious. I sat with everyone, whether they were in media, they were in digital, in social media. I always volunteered to do things which I didn't know. I was always working, always available, because I said I'll only learn by doing. And so I became extremely, everybody used to say, you're always working, you're always, you know, whether I didn't know, I would ask questions and then I would tell them, I think I can do that. Give me 2 days. And I'd come back with a presentation and say, does this work? You know, small changes. So I learned by doing. I learned by putting myself out there. Even when it was very uncomfortable, I would ask questions. I never feared to be looked at as not too clever, because I said the only way I will know is by admitting what I don't know. It has carried me far. I still do that till today. I still jump at things and then ask questions later, but it has paid well for me. And I stayed there for 20 years. And 2 years ago, there was a voluntary early exit program that was executed by the organization. I had at that time reason to become the managing director of Scanad. I was handling a JWT, a digital unit called Squad, and I felt I had reason to where I could rise within the organization, and that I had all the knowledge to finally get back to something I'd always wanted when I started out, which was to own my own business. And the package came at a time when I had been thinking, how will I do it? You know, the financing, it's a big risk. It was just after COVID, things hadn't really still picked up. But I said, the time is right, the money is now here, there is nothing to hold me back. And therefore, when I left immediately, I wasn't clear. I knew I wanted to start. But it sharpened over the next few months, because then I said, my colleagues at the time, both Dipesh and Sandeep, had also left. They had taken the VE. And we decided perhaps it's now time to pull our money together and start. We had had discussions about what would be the ideal agency that we wanted to build, what would be different, why would people come to us. We used to have these conversations, but it was always in passing. But now we decided to make it a reality. And today here I am, co-founder and chief operations officer of the Partnership Africa.
Wow, congratulations on that. And you know, you said you had been there for 20 years. That's quite an illustrious career. And then now making that jump, as you said, going into business is not a joke. It's high risk, it can be high return, but it can also go the other way. So tell me, what have been some of the critical lessons you've learned so far of being in business as opposed to being employed? Because now you're looking at it from a different angle. As a COO and a co-founder, you have a different view. What is business like?
Yeah. So there are very many interesting things you learn when you're starting on your own. When you're in employment, you kind of have some responsibilities, but you have hundreds of people backing you, whether it's finance, whether it's legal, whether it's compliance, risk, so many things that you take for granted because you can do your work. They enable you to focus only on what you're supposed to deliver. Now, when I started, I realized that I had to wear very many hats. I had to wear HR, facility, admin, you know, all these things. I had to recruit people. I had to look for an office space. A lot of these things, I was literally doing them on my own. But one of the things that I learned about all the things that had always been, as I said, jump first and ask later, had allowed me to have a very broad knowledge of business. I had sat with compliance people, with legal people, with HR people. It was not a role that I left wholly to the people who are responsible, because I felt if I don't understand it, I would not be able to do my job well. And when you sit in front of very senior clients, they can ask you any question that is left field. And if you think that they will only ask you about what you know, you will be very surprised. And I had learned that early on, that you need to be very capable of having any discussion within not just communications, but what is happening, what are the trends, where is digital going to take us, you know, is AI going to impact my business? We get very interesting questions, and you have to always be ready on your feet. So my curiosity took me very far. And in this case, helped me to establish very quickly before I could hire all the right people that could then start supporting me. It's been difficult, it's been challenging, it's been exciting. I have learned, but the biggest thing is that I've also really unlearned. Because again, as I say, when you've worked somewhere for 20 years, you pick up a lot of mannerisms of an organization. Some of them are good, but some of them can be very negative. You have to remain agile. In a small business, people expect you, because you're new, to be hungrier. Therefore, something that could take 1 week, you're expected to do it in 48 hours, 72 hours. Agility is something that I've learned. I also then had to recruit people. And one of the things I always say is that in advertising, we are a people business. We are all about people. We don't have a product. Our product is creative. So the people who our clients meet are us. And I learned early on that it is very easy to work with excellent people who match the commitment that you're making. So if you're saying, I am the best in the market, then truly the people who work with you have to be the best in the market. And I learned to identify people who were passionate, people who had a great attitude, people who had great energy. And you hear me not talking about very functional sort of experience. I'm talking about soft issues. And the reason that mattered is because if things are tough, but you have a great attitude, you have that great energy, you can overcome. But if you're just, you just know your things because you are very well read, you're book smart, but you don't have a great attitude, you're not passionate about what you do, you don't love advertising, then when those hard times come, those things really show through. That is something that has also carried me. A lot of the people who work with me, I interviewed them myself. People get surprised that I like to sit in interviews, even if I'm hiring a very junior sort of level. And I don't consider them junior. They might be junior today in title. But what I'm hiring them for is what I see that they will bring for me, how they will grow, where they can potentially go, what that means for me, but what also that means for them. Because I hope that one day, if people were to look at me and say, what kind of a leader was Sally? I hope that all the opportunities that I got from an Emma, from a lady called Neema, many people who in my life influenced me, that they will say I allowed them to come into their full potential because I saw who they could be and I gave them room to become that. So very many lessons. It's a lot of hard work, but we celebrate a lot. We always take time to see who has contributed, how do we recognize them, what could we have done better, what have we learned from that experience. We have a very open sort of way of working. Anybody can have an idea that is better than mine. Anybody can bring some efficiency or contribute to something that perhaps we could have done better. So we believe that everybody contributes. Everybody has something to offer. And that is very different from many of the places where I had worked in the past.
People don't care what you know until they know that you care. Absolutely. So it's very important. Yeah. Now, there was a thing all over the news the other day about, you know where I'm going?
Yes.
A key client that moved to the Partnership Africa. I'd like you to tell us a little bit about that. What do you think made you stand out from the competition? Because it's a very competitive industry that you're in. So what are some of the things that you would say make you stand out as the Partnership Africa?
Yeah, thank you for that question. We recently, of course, were awarded Airtel, the Partnership Africa and Publicis Network across Africa. And I think for us it was extremely validating. While we are an extremely young agency, we say we are just going to be two in July. Between Sandeep, Dipesh and I, we have over 100 years of experience. We have had experience in telco. We had worked on Safaricom in the past. We had worked on Diageo. We had huge experience at Equity, Kenya Commercial Bank. A lot of that came to bear because in a pitch, people want agencies that can hold their hands, that they can trust to build their brand, because their brands matter. I think if you read that article, they had been with the previous agency for 15 years. So you can imagine it was not an easy decision. On our part, we also worked very hard to win the business. We had to prove ourselves. We were put through the paces, not just about the end product, which is the creative. All the way back, if you think about operation, governance, structures, compliance, tools, insights, or what could we bring to the table that was completely different and that could actually take that brand to the next level. And I think one of the things that worked very well in favor of us is that we had all the right tools, we had the right people, we had the right network, we have the right partners on the ground in Africa. But beyond that, we really are people who believe that tools complement what we know. And what we know we can only learn by spending time, understanding insights, understanding local nuances, understanding what are the pain points that our consumers face. When it comes to telco, a telco is a very invisible brand. You know that. If Airtel is your network, you don't care so much about Airtel. You just want your phone to work at any time. When when your phone is not working, when some of the services are down, that is when you start thinking this brand, because actually the brand is not at the forefront. What is on your phone is the SIM card, is what is the most important thing. And therefore, for a brand that is so invisible, how do you still make people have an affinity for that brand? It is by understanding what challenges people face. What are the opportunities that this brand can give people? I always tell people, for you to succeed with anything, and it works across board, is that you have to be able to tell me why this matters for me. What difference will it make in my life? Because choice is, ample. There are many options that a consumer has today. But why yours? Why yours over anybody else's? What we brought well to the table was that understanding. And then being able to leverage that understanding to show the brand how the brand can then be able to use this to grow for the next 3-4 years. We actually thought all the way out, what are the challenges? Over and above that, I think one of the things that many agencies do is that we really answer briefs. A client will say, this is my problem. And many agencies will run and say, this is the solution to your problem. But in there is a gap to say, is that the real problem? Is creative the right solution? And it's tough because sometimes creative is what you offer, but that's not the right answer. And sometimes even you have to really convince the client that that's not the right answer. So sometimes the client will say, this is the right consumer. Then you say, no, that is not the right consumer. This is the right consumer because of these reasons. I think being able to interrogate client challenges, understanding the client business 100%, leaving that business, going to the market. What's happening? Till today, I find myself walking into Airtel shops because I'm learning them. I didn't know them before. I had handled Safaricom. I knew them well. So I find myself walking into the Sarit Center, sitting there, watching what are people asking, what are they talking about, what are the challenges they are facing. I'm really trying to understand, because the day I put a solution in front of the client, I want it to be not just the right solution for me, because it's a great creative piece and people will talk about it. Because if it does not solve the client's problem, then I have done not just them, but myself a disservice. And I think that extra effort that we put in understanding the business challenge, in understanding the real problem, in understanding the real consumer truth, the real consumer challenge, that is what makes us different.
Wow, so really immersing yourself in that brand to understand and not just being hands-off. And you're talking about the role of insights when making decisions. I'd like you to tell us where we are. There's AI that has come up and we cannot ignore it. What role is AI playing right now when it comes to marketing decisions, and where do you see it in years to come?
I look at tools as a great support to what we do. But you have to be able to bring something to the table first. I mean, what Sally can do, no AI can do. But with AI, Sally can be much better, much faster, much more agile. I think we need to always look at tools as being able to complement what it is that we bring to the table. Many times we are saying it should replace. It should not replace. More and more what we find is that it's seen as a shortcut, not as something to sharpen what it is that you have to offer. And I think that's the problem, because you see more and more often people are saying, I read an article, but it sounded like AI. Because we are all taking the shortcut to just, give it a prompt, and the first immediate answer it gives you is what you put out there. I think it's extremely lazy, and I think it's important that you really understand what the tool's capability is, so that you're able to use it to your best advantage for you. But you cannot make yourself invisible. What do you bring to the table, and what can that any technology add in terms of the value that you bring? If it's able to make us go faster to market, that's great. That's what we are looking for. You need to be able to understand them well so that they add value to not just you, but to your business, and therefore then to your clients. I think we cannot let go of the ideas that we have as human beings. Our work is ideas. That's what we put in front of clients every day. We are creative people by nature. The AI, while it can hasten the creative process, it cannot replace the creative thinking, which is born, as you said, of those insights. The work of going to meet human beings in their houses to understand, why do you use this product over the next product? Why did you choose this over that? That work cannot be replaced by AI, because in sitting with that person, you prompt, prod until you find a real truth that then you can extrapolate to make your communication much more effective, much more relevant, and therefore much more successful for the client.
Okay. Now I'd like us to talk a little bit about balance, because you said you're a worker.
Yes,
you love working and you do the work, and you said, you know, for a smaller startup, you have to put in more work. You said somebody would do 1 week, they expect you to do it in 48 hours. So how do you strike a balance or harmony in your work and your other elements of your life? Because it can be involving. You might be here the whole day, sleep in the office. So how do you strike that balance?
Okay. So I think the first hack I ever did was to get 2 very good co-founders who are very good at things that I'm not necessarily very good at. Dipesh is our Chief Creative Officer. He is the best creative that I have worked with, bar none, over all the years. And I knew that was not something that I would be able to handle on my own. Sandeep is our CEO. He is what I call the dreamer. Sandeep aims every day for the moon. He can wake up today and tell us we are going to Mars. You don't even ask questions, just get on board, we are going. I love that because he keeps our eye consistently focused on a bigger agenda, because it's so easy in the quagmire to just focus on the small things, not the big picture. He keeps our eyes always focused on the big picture. He's also great when it comes to thinking finance, thinking investments, thinking value, thinking where are we going to be 5 years from now. Really big picture thinking. And you need somebody who is constantly doing that, who is not derailed by the day-to-day. I do operations and I'm great at that, and therefore we really complement each other well. So that also helps, because I don't only have to lean on myself. If I have questions, if I am wondering, I can always sit, and you know, we sit in the same space, and I'm always ready to turn and say, this is the struggle I'm having today. Are you able to help? Some days I tell them, guys, today I don't feel like coming to the office, and are you going to, you know, run with it? They run with it. I am a believer in traveling around, not just Kenya, but everywhere. Kenya particularly, very close to my heart. I handled Kenya Tourism Board for a long time, and I'm a believer in Tembea Kenya. We have the most beautiful country, and I feel like that is where I feel the most peace. When you completely switch off, completely walk away from the job, because you need to rejuvenate yourself, you need to come back with fresh ideas, you need to rest, you need to inspire yourself in new ways, because in our business where you're constantly ideating, constantly presenting, it's easy to get very drained. It's easy not to find new motivators. And when you walk away, when you go to another market, see different things, meet different people, it really opens your mind. And you come back, you know, changed, challenged, inspired. And those are some of the things that I love doing whenever I can get the chance. I'll tell you another thing. I'm not a believer in working late in the night. It's very rare. This year, I have only worked late, maybe at most on 2 nights. I avoid it as much as possible. I also encourage my team to only work during the working hours as much as we can. Work-life balance is very important. I think that in this industry, because people assume that agencies are fast-paced, everybody is always ready to work, young people, machines, factory, those languages are thrown around. But I don't believe that you get the best out of people when they are exhausted, when they have nothing more to offer. I have been known to kick people out of the office in the night. I'm like, please, you know, I don't want to see so many people working late every day. I ask them, what is it that you're working on that cannot be finished during the day? Rest is sacred. I am a believer in that. We cannot be our best unless we are rested. And it's something that I hope many young people can learn, because they are in a hurry to grow. They're in a hurry to push themselves for, you know, to be successful in 1.5 minutes. That is not the way the world works. And sometimes if you're not resting, you don't give yourself the best of yourself to anybody or to anything. But the last thing I think about working so hard is that I always tell people, guys, it's just advertising. We are not saving people's lives. I'm not a doctor. It's never that serious. And I think if you allow the people who work for you to know that even for you that it's okay, they can wake up on a Tuesday and tell you, you know, today I'm just not up to it. But it contributes to the wellness of the organization. It contributes to their own personal wellness. It contributes to me working with people who are happy to be here, who are healthy to be here, who are giving me their best, so to speak.
Wow. And let's talk a little bit more about that. You know, sometimes you're just feeling like you want, they call it a mental health break. Where do you draw the line? Because, you know, as a leader, you want your team to perform, but you also are cognizant of the fact that we need those breaks. So where do you draw the line to the point where you're not seeing somebody is taking advantage of this so-called breaks, I need to be off, and they're not performing as they should?
I think if you create a space where there is that openness, where there is that leeway, to relax when you want to relax. In this square where we work, we are surrounded by restaurants, and sometimes we actually go and brainstorm at the restaurant. As I said, we pause often to celebrate each other. We pause often to acknowledge how far we have come. I think if you create that kind of space, you find less and less of that. People actually rarely ask for that. But if the pace was different, if the pace was too demanding, nobody is taking a break, nobody is stopping to celebrate, nobody is stopping to recognize where we've come, what we've achieved, I think that's where you start finding people saying, you know, I just need a way out. I think you have to create a space for your people to thrive, whatever that means. And sometimes it's not what you know, it's what they tell you. You know, somebody says, I prefer working today in the pod, I don't want to talk to anybody. Somebody says, I'm just going to be downstairs working out of at cafe, so to speak. And that's fine, as long as they are doing their work within the regular hours. I think as a leader, it's you to show that from yourself, how you behave, how you work, what you are willing to do in terms of getting a business, what you tolerate from businesses, because a lot of our pressure will definitely come from clients. Clients put a lot of pressure on timelines. But for us, it is how do we manage that? How do we manage that on behalf of the people who work for us, where they are getting that pressure and feeling they have to do things in 12 hours, 24 hours? How do we have clear SLAs with our clients? How do we have a matrix of escalation? How do we also intervene where we feel this is a bit too much, but we know that the person on that business is not able to say no because maybe the person is too senior? How do we stay hands-on to make sure that we also know the pressures that they are facing and we can support them to manage as best as we all can?
Okay, so culture is very important.
It is.
Now we're about to switch gears, but before that, in your over 2 decades of experience, what would you say is one of the toughest lessons that you have had to learn?
Oh, that's a tough question because there have been many. But I think one of the things that I learned most, and I think this is the most critical thing, is really about people. I keep saying that what we have to offer is the people that we work with. And I think the toughest lesson is when you work in an organization where the culture is relentless because for whatever reason, either we are number one, the people before you have inculcated a culture of pressure, you know, you're not good enough if you're not able to be here 24 hours, if you can't work until 4 a.m. I think being in a culture where that is what you have experienced, I think the hardest lesson I had to learn is that we are only human beings. You heard me saying that we are not solving the world's biggest problems. Honestly, we are solving the biggest problem I could have in a day is a billboard needs to go up in the next 4 hours. It's never that serious. I had to learn that to get the best out of people is also to give them room to do the best work. If you are as strong as your weakest link, if you are not able to be the biggest champion of your people, when they perform, be the champion. When they don't perform, also hold them to account. When they are failing or when they don't live up to what you have committed to, don't hold on for too long. Because a lot of organizations also fail because of that. Because we put a lot of things on paper. You will be on probation for 3 months. We will review you after 3 months. And after 3 months, we say, oh, no, it's okay. Let's just continue for another 3 months, another 3 months. But what does that mean? You are no longer putting an excellent product in front of the client because you're compromising. So fail fast, wake up, get at it again. and keep going. I think those are some of the things that I've learned, that you don't win all the time. Sometimes you'll fail, sometimes you'll not be at your best. Learn why and pick up as quickly as you can, fix the problem and move on. But to also do that, it means that you have to listen to every voice, because your voice might be the loudest in the room, but it might also be the wrongest in the room. You understand? Yeah. So it's to also listen to what your teams are saying, because sometimes if you're loud and you say this is the best idea and then you lose the pitch, it is because of that. It is because somebody else in the room could have had a voice to say that maybe if we just change one thing, but because you're not listening, then you fail. Wow. So the people are most important, but there are very many things when it comes to people, and you must be considerate of all the elements of bringing the best out of the people that you work with.
Sally, you talked about being hungry and being curious about knowing, doing different things, but then sometimes you have strengths and you're not so good at something. So how do you get to know that I should be focusing on this and I should just let some of these other tasks go?
I think one of the most critical things, and I think something everybody has to take time with, is to find really what is your true purpose. What do you want out of life? What do you want out of this career? What is that goal that you have envisioned for yourself? And every time you want to get into something, make a decision about something, is to ask yourself, is this in service of that goal? Will it help me to reach that goal, or is it derailing me from reaching that goal? I think that's a very simple lens to look at things, because then it's clear to you. Should I invest more in this because it's helping me towards my goal, or should I drop this because it's actually a detour that is not going to be taking me anywhere? I understand, though, the pressure of saying, let me do everything. I'm young, I need to make my name, people need to know me. Let me not say no, because if I say no, people will think one way about me. I think if you keep that lens, you will be very true to yourself, because the hunger to do many things in a way makes you not excellent. Because you cannot deliver everything excellence if you have 20 things and you are supposed to do 5 things. In the process of doing 20 things, you will fail at actually 15. And you will only maybe get 5 right. So learn to balance life, rest, curiosity, learning, and learn your purpose. That purpose is really your North Star. It will always keep you true, and it will make it easier and easier to say no, and easier to say yes. Because today, as I said, when I was in sales, I had a purpose. I used to say that if I get into agency, I will leave when I'm at the top. I will rise to the top. I always had a goal that I gave myself. But my intent from when I was young was to own a business. So anything that could get me there. That is why I learned many aspects of the business. That's why I asked questions. That's why I start with finance. I knew that if I own my own business, I cannot be one-dimensional. And therefore, it made it easy for me to make the choices that I made. And maybe even people ask me, you stayed for 20 years. Why? I joined as an account director. But as I said, I left as a managing director of 4 of the business units of the organization. It is what has brought me where I am today. That is why we have been able to be successful in a very short time. And it is also because I kept my eye on that goal. I wanted to build a business, but I wanted it also to be as successful. Okay,
so you said that you had to learn a lot of things along the way. You had to go to finance, you had to understand how a business works. So in addition to learning from these departments, did you have to complement with courses, or did you just learn on the job as you interacted with the different departments?
Yeah, I think one of the things that you can learn from experience, but I think the true learning will actually come from immersing yourself in learning. I took finance courses. I've been a learner for a long time. But one of the things I always tell people to take advantage of, most organizations will have training courses. You will find that it's already inbuilt in the system, but many people don't take them up because they're just there. I am a believer in being an expert in what I do, and therefore I did take a number of courses. Those that were offered by the network, some outside the network if they were not available, but I felt it was critical to me delivering to my commitment well. It's something I still do. I find myself curious. I have been curious about AI, so I've started taking some courses. I see there's a lot of AI courses. Google offers a lot of, when digital came, Google offers a lot of free courses. And I used to be very curious. So in my free time, I would always say, let me just sign up for, and many of them are free actually. You realize, Udemy, a number of courses. Nowadays, Harvard, free courses. So the world has really changed. When we were coming up, these courses were few and far between, and first and foremost, they were completely out of reach, because when you are so junior, the course is so expensive. You're thinking, how do I pay rent? How do I take this course? But today the world has really changed. And I think if you want to be good at something, you have to immerse yourself in the knowledge. You can't just get away with, you know, bare minimum knowledge that because I've sat with Claire, I can now tomorrow say I can be the next host of this show. Does not work that way. I think for you to be able to be credible, to be relevant, to be authoritative in what you do, you have to have real knowledge, and sometimes you have to invest in it out of your pocket. But today the world has also really brought all this knowledge to our fingertips. Make time to learn, make time to build yourself and to grow yourself.
Awesome. Just invest in your personal development.
Yes.
Now, Sally, I'd like to know, what does success look like to you?
Success to me looks like freedom. Success to me looks like supporting my family in whatever capacity, whether it's being present, whether it's supporting them in kind, in any manner. Success to me means that I don't have to be at anybody's beck and call. Success to me means that I can leave the office at 5. I don't have to come to work every day. And success to me means also exploring other passions that I've always had. I was telling somebody this yesterday and they died of laughter. One of the things that I went back to recently is knitting. And when I was young, my mom really used to knit a lot. She used to knit for us and make for us sweaters, all these things. And somehow one of the ways I started was, initially when I started, it was to manage stress. But now I just find myself, it's a very enjoyable thing to do. And somebody was like, oh, you're such an old lady. I said, it's such a fun thing. I was encouraging them to do it because they were telling me that they are going through a very stressful period in their life. And I said, sometimes it's good to do things for the sake of doing them, not for the sake of somebody is going to pay me or I can monetize this. I have learned to really do things that I enjoy for no other reason other than they're enjoyable to me. That is what success means to me. It means so many things, but at the heart, as I said, it's really freedom to explore, to find out more about myself, to do things I've always loved doing. And I'll tell you one cheeky one is because I really love jewelry, as you can see.
I can see.
To indulge in my love for jewelry. That is what it means to me.
Awesome, awesome. And you know, to be able to have that freedom and not being at people's beck and call means that you need to have your finances right. So I'd like you to speak to the women and tell them what would be that one financial tip that you would give women about managing their money and creating wealth, basically.
I would say it's never too early to start. It's never too early. Even if you feel I don't have enough, start with the smallest amount that you can afford to put aside. Find out talk to people in finance, talk to people in banks, find out, read and say, how can I grow my money? If there is a unit trust, put your money in it. Build for the future. Start now. I find that one of the biggest mistakes is that when we are young, we always say, but I don't have enough money to put aside. I think that is one of the biggest mistakes that we do. We always have money to put aside, however small it is, but keep building on it, because as your career grows, if you didn't build that habit, then you will never put money aside, because you will always feel, I never have enough money. But if you build that habit from when you're young, find opportunities to invest. Today, there are, apps that tell you can invest in anything. As I said, today there is a course I always see. I think one of the ones I saw most recently was Mwango Capital, teaching for, I think, 3,000 shillings. There's a course that they're teaching you how to grow wealth, how to build your finance, what the unit trust versus SACCOs, all these things, how to use money to make more money. I think the knowledge, the information is out there today. Nobody needs to get away with saying, but I did not know, I don't understand. You don't even have to ask anybody if you feel intimidated by asking. Just read, find out, take some of these smaller risks. Sometimes you feel, I've lost a bit of money when I took too big a risk, but I learned from that risk and knew what to do the next time. I have sat with people in the bank who everybody thinks you have to talk to a wealth advisor, you have to be wealthy. Actually, you don't. And these people have a lot of information. They can really guide you. Even if today your money is small, they can tell you this is how you can take advantage even of products that can now help you to grow that wealth over the long term. But the biggest lesson is start early. Don't wait. There is a lifetime to build that money.
Awesome, awesome. And I think that circles back to what you were saying, like, don't feel like it's a foolish question. Don't feel like I have to have the millions to go and speak to that person. Just go and find out that information.
Ask. There is no harm.
Yeah, yeah. Now, I'd like us to know, get to know you a little bit more.
Yes.
What kind of music do you listen to?
Everything else except reggae. Oh my. I listen to all, I listen to all manner of music. Most of, I'll tell you, I start my mornings with gospel. That's how I always start my day, because I find it very inspirational. It gets me in the mood, even if you wake up and you're a bit low, today you don't have energy, because sometimes I tell people you walk into an office like this on the back of maybe a lost pitch, on the back of people expecting you to be a leader, always happy, always shining, always as inspirational. Sometimes it's a bit of pressure. So you encourage yourself also in the morning. I am a believer in God. I would not have reached here without God. I believe it. I see his hand in my life every day. And it is an anchor. You need to have an anchor in your life. And that grounds me every day, reminds me why I do what I do, reminds me that I have an opportunity to lead other people, and to inspire other people through the way I decide to live my life, through the words that I choose to speak over them, to them. And it's really a guide. So, yeah.
Yeah. And let's talk about humanizing leadership, because as you said, you come here, people expect you're the leader, whether you've lost the pitch or not, they expect you to carry yourself in a certain way. So how do you humanize leadership and make people know, you know, I'm the leader, but you know, that days that I'm not, you know, feeling it.
Yeah. But there's some days I'm very candid. Even there are people who come and ask me, and I tell them, you know, today is just one of those tough days. I'm trying to get over it, but I'm not over it. I'll try my best. Because I think one of the most important thing is always to be real and authentic about yourself, what you're feeling, how you're feeling, and people should see the real you. I don't put up a face. When I say I come and I'm up, some days I'm actually up and I lift everybody, but there are days I come and say, maybe Sandeep, today it's your turn to do that. Maybe Dipesh, today it's your turn to do that, because today it's a tough day for me. And, you know, we all have real lives outside of this office. You know, I have a family. Sometimes there's something happening. Maybe somebody is not well. Maybe we're just facing any other pressure. And sometimes you can't act enough, you know, to cover that. And you shouldn't have to. You should be able to show up the way you are and speak truthfully to it, so that actually people can then support you. We as women are taught to hide a lot of the emotions that we feel. You're supposed to show up in a particular way. Women are supposed to just be perfect all the time. Never, you know, show people that, you know, you're struggling today, you know, whatever things that you're going through. And I really don't encourage that. I feel you just genuinely have to tell people it's just not one of those days.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what is your current read?
I read literally 10 books at a time. And this is a very interesting thing, because I read fiction, non-fiction, biography. I read anything. I'm a voracious reader. And it's because, to me, I think it's a way of learning that is without pressure. You know, sometimes when you're doing a course, there is that pressure. There's going to be an exam, you know, you have to pass. All these things that sometimes take away the enjoyment of just learning for the sake of learning. And I read everything. I can't explain to you. I have, if I show you my phone, I have a Kindle that's full of books. I have an Audible that's full of books. And anytime, in fact, in between meetings, I sometimes open my phone and I just start reading something. So I read 100 things. My bedside table has like 10 books, and it depends on how I feel in the evening when I want to go and sleep, and I'm like, today maybe I want some adventure, today maybe I want some inspiration, and I'm constantly juggling books. Under that, the one I have been consistently trying to read is one that is called I think it's a simple MBA. It's an MBA book that it's been tough to read, because every time I read 2 pages, I go back. I'm also reading a book about money, because money is something that many of us did not learn how to manage well from when we were young, which is why I spoke into it a bit, that you have to start when you're young and you have to read about it so that you know what to do with money when you get the money, because it gives you choices and options. So please read as much as you can, whatever you can, and do it for the pleasure of doing it.
Yeah, awesome. Now, as we wrap up, I'd like you to look into this camera and speak to that woman who is just trying to build her career, or is just wondering, okay, what's the next step? How would you, what advice would you give her to keep on pushing through and to get to where they want to go?
So one thing I'll say, don't push through. You don't have to push through. I think one of the things that I say, I had a talk recently and I spoke about some of the 3 things that have been called to me. Those 3 things, the first one is to have courage, so that you can be able to do the things that you have to do, so that you can stand in front of people. But to have courage, you have to have something to back it up. You can't just be courageous for the sake of being courageous, but courage will get you to many places. You need to be confident, because when you're confident, people see it in you, and therefore people believe when you say, give me this responsibility, they believe that you can be able to do it because you showcase that confidence. Again, the confidence has to be backed by reality. And the last thing I always tell people is to be consistent. Keep your promises to yourself, but to other people. And that goes to you saying yes and no, so that you remain committed to the promises that you have given people. Those 3 things will take you a really long way. If I was to add a 4th one, I would say stay curious, because curiosity keeps you young, curiosity keeps you relevant, and curiosity makes you a very easy person to engage with, because people are always surprised by the knowledge that you have.
Courage, confidence, consistency, and curiosity. You have heard it from Sally Sawe, the Chief Operations Officer and co-founder at the Partnership Africa. This has been She Means Business. I have been your host, Claire Munde. Until next time, have a good one.